everyone. Thanks for joining us this Monday evening. I'm so excited to come here live with you with my friend Sarah, who is an alumni from Beachway. And Sarah and I actually met a couple months ago and have stayed in touch. And I've been really inspired by her story. And she has the courage and the bravery that she also wanted to share it with all of you. So thank you, Sarah, for being on this live broadcast with us tonight.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to
So
be here.
Sarah, just a little bit of your history. It's been about 2 years since you've been at Beachway, and specifically on Wednesday, it's your 2-year sobriety
Yeah.
anniversary. So everybody that's watching, I think we
Very
need some
kind.
like clapping emojis, and the smile says it all. I
Yeah.
mean, you're doing great. So I think that's wonderful. And I want to kind of tell everybody your story because it is truly inspiring. Years ago, you were dealing with some mental health issues, right? A
Yeah.
lot of panic attacks and things that were almost incapable of, getting through the day without anxiety. And
hmm
there's a lot of people out there right now in the past 2 years who have similar, issues with depression,
hmm
anxiety, and panic attacks. Um, and that actually then turned into drinking and doing drugs to
hmm
be able to cope. Can you for people out there that might actually have a loved one who's in a similar situation? I know with COVID, it's actually even more than ever. Can you just give a little bit of background about how that all came about?
Absolutely. So I was actually diagnosed with anxiety and depression at 9, really early. I did have some childhood trauma that kind of rushed that, but I had pretty chronic depression here and there for a solid in like 15 years before Beachway, and depression and anxiety as well. I did have a history of self harm. I did have a history of um, pretty pretty aggressive suicidal thoughts as well. I've come far, but there even right before Beachway, I felt pretty out of control, and it needed a lot of attention. And I think the hardest thing is I think we've talked about how fast paced our world is, and I think maybe there's a little embarrassment there, but the big thing that I dealt with is I just never had the time. I just had to suck it up, and especially like in the corporate world, I was like still new, like pretty fresh out of college, and like was very much believed in this like sacrifice everything for your job kind of mentality, and I didn't want to miss work. I didn't want to miss out on other things. I just felt like there was no time to pay attention to it. And it wasn't that bad. But I did get to a place that where your day to day like anxiety and depression, like you'd have bad days and you'd have good days, and then there is just like these 2 years where I never had a good day. I It developed into, I knew it was deeper, but just day to day things just brought unrest in me. And I think I told you this time, I don't use the word panic attacks lightly. It was like a truly crippling like experience that like I woke up and immediately like couldn't breathe and like couldn't like almost like see and would scream and cry. I And it would happen multiple times a day. And I know there's like kind of this almost timeline of like you get anxious to the point where like you become so hopeless that nothing's going to work out, and so you have the anxiety and then you also have depression at the same time. So because I never really got it checked, or I never just really paid attention to it, I I felt I was going through a phase where I was leaning very heavily, especially on alcohol. It was the only thing that could like I felt that I could function. There wasn't like a I love alcohol thing. It was a like this is the only thing that's getting me through the day, and of course like once you become emotionally dependent on it, then I became extremely physically dependent on it as well. So I had to drink it like the second I woke up, where I was physically I was a mess, or like I would shake, or I would and I had to drink it like during the day so I wouldn't like have a panic attack during work so I could like literally get through work and just to do basic functions. And then I would mix it as well. I was on Adderall for about 10 years. I was prescribed it, but I did abuse it, taking it multiple times a day. And just the combination was the like, okay, this is how I'm going to get through work and social life and everything. And I couldn't function through anything without being dependent on some kind of chemical, basically.
It's interesting. We talked about how, what came first, right? I mean, what came first was having this anxiety, this panic attacks and depression that then turned into ways to cope with it. What I found was interesting was when you got to Beachway, they uncovered that there was really PTSD that happened to you. And that was the source to all of these things. So all of the panic attacks, which then in turn to using substances to be able to kind of quiet that noise.
Right.
And, PTSD, people think that means accident or, that you were in the armed forces, which of course it can, but really PTSD can mean a lot of different things. I know that they were able to kind of peel away the onion in the trauma group. And I know that the trauma group is a really safe place. In just a few words, like how would you explain the trauma group to somebody who wasn't really familiar with it?
Yeah, like you said, I didn't realize I had it for a long time, but I had all the symptoms. We're not taught as much about mental stability, mental health, especially as just as much as we are today. But I like didn't even realize I barely slept through college. Like I averaged like 3 hours a night, obviously because I wasn't on Adderall, but I was terrified to go to bed. I had night terrors all the time, and that's like a very simple, like obvious, like that, like just reliving everything. And I think it was important through the trauma group, like just we had to relive everything, which was so hard. But we did it together. And Will, who is kind of the head of and the director of it, he came up with ways that we could really we could bring up what we didn't even know. We really overanalyzed every part of our life and everything that really did like break our hearts. And I think one of the very first steps to figuring out your trauma in your life is things that we didn't even know affected us that much, and had that much of like an effect that it actually like it showed how we function, or it was in charge of how we function. And so being able to like not just like see it in your own, but to see others who have been through the same thing, you can actually like pinpoint like and almost like highlight whenever they're going through something, like, oh, that's what that is. And like, oh, this is A, this happens in other people, but B, this is a reoccurring thing that also happens in my life. And I'm starting to understand the illness. And I think just getting the general idea of what the mental illness is and what trauma is really helped me like actually like pinpoint in my life what really was traumatic. And then I could treat it that way. And so that was like the first big thing. And then the second thing, I said, like, Will gave us a lot of tools, to give us a lot of literature and just so much repetition, which like almost sounds annoying, but like you need it. Like you consistently need someone to like point it out for you. And people to reinforce and encourage you. To just tackle it, B, that, you're going to be okay, and C, like this is just going to take time and it's going to take hand holding, because it can be really, even going through traumatic events can be traumatic in the moment. Like your body can break down, and, you're wiped out the rest of the week. And, it's just, like you said, it's a safe place. It was a very understanding and patient place. And yeah, as well as just the encouragement you would get from Will, especially, and others of, this was wrong, this hurt you, but we're going to get through it. And it changed my life. Yeah.
You mentioned to me the community was so important. So you had Will, but you also had a group of people there with you, right? That were all going through not exactly the same thing, but we're all kind of in a similar place. And
Right.
you said that that community was a huge piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
Being in that group, being in that safe place. And I think that's really powerful too, because there's a lot of people at home alone, and your heart goes out to them because it's hard enough to try to get help,
Mm-hmm.
but also when you're by yourself, it's even that much harder.
Yeah, and even like I had done EMDR before, which is like a kind of a process therapy that you do with a therapist one on one. And I've tackled trauma before, but for some reason, doing it with I got so much more out of it doing it with a group. It's so much more clicked for some reason, and it felt more safe. It just because you're going through it with people who've been through it before. Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't list all the reasons why, but it was just so much easier to like finally tackle it there than it was one on one in an office.
it's it's almost like you have to give yourself that time to do it. I'm
Mhm.
looking at your notes where you said that you just had to slow down. So it sounds
Mhm.
like you were not sleeping, you're working around the clock, you were thinking you could get better on your own, but you needed that time to slow down and just
Mhm.
work through with, in a safe environment to do that.
Mhm.
How is your connections like with your loved ones? How is it now, post Beachway as in before?
Oh wow, that's a good question. So different. I think the biggest thing, one of the hardest things I had to realize when I was there was how the way I was living my life was affecting them. And the sad part is that I wanted to be there for the way that they were there for me, but I never could. And that's something I actually hear a lot when I got to Beachway and in recovery in general is that why can't I be there for those who have been there for me? And it's one of the first things you want to do. And it's actually like I found that it's a very codependent response of like you want to like skip looking at yourself so you can and be there for others so you don't have to do the inner work. But I kind of tell people I've gotten to be there I finally have gotten to show up in a way that I've always wanted to, but it wasn't necessarily the main goal. It was a wonderful perk out of finally getting to be there for myself and learning a lot about it's putting an oxygen mask on yourself first before you can for someone else. And that it sounds cheesy and you've heard it a lot, but it really is like the only way I've been able to be there for others and not resent them as well, or not feel like I'm not getting anything back and they're saying in return. It really is out of like an almost like an unresentful and like very pure place before it was before. But like a really good example was my older sister who was extremely like codependent and like needed to fix everything in my life, and we both had to like sit down and realize like I need to take care of myself and she needs to take care of herself, and I don't think she trusted me. She was following me on my phone, I had no idea, like all of these things, reaching out to all of my friends to check in on me. And now like the fact that like as small as it is, like I cannot answer the phone and she knows that like I'm not dead in a ditch somewhere is a huge process. Like she leaves me alone with her son now. Like she can actually like she can depend on me to be like actually an equal partner in her life. And that was one of like the biggest like when doing amends, like I know this is going to take time, but like to get your trust back and the fact that I get to like serve you back is like was one of like the happiest things I've gotten to do in my life. And that's been the case with a lot of my family and friends as well. Getting to be there for them emotionally, like actually showing up on time and being more reliable has been one of the, like the happiest things I think I've had in the past couple of months, like really come to me. So that's like one of the happiest parts about getting
Yeah,
sober, I
you just
think.
shared. Well, yeah, I mean, your family, they were the ones so worried about you, and they were the one telling you needed
Mhm.
help, and now you've been able to prove to them 2 years on Wednesday that you've been able to do
Yeah.
it, which is so inspiring. And you even went to a friend's bachelorette party this weekend,
Yeah.
and I was right, and I was was wondering if that was a hard thing to do. And your response was so interesting because you said it was hard, but that you worked with your tools that you've had
Mm-hmm.
all week long, knowing that you had this bachelor party, and you were still able to show up and be there for your friend that was getting married. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's come a long way.
Yeah.
How did it feel? How did it feel, being part of that mix?
I've done it before. And the first time I did it, I think I was maybe 8 months sober. It wasn't easy. Um, I did realize like when I go, I need like almost like safe word, like just like to know when I need to walk away or when I need to call someone, which I still have like on me just in case. But I think I told you, going through it, I realized the only way you can really prepare is like is doing the work during the week consistently. It's enough to like I think the practice of like using your tools all of the time when you go into situations like that, it comes very natural if you're practicing all the time, to like not be phased. And that on top of like really learning, I did a lot of work in CODA, which is like Codependence Anonymous as well, and really realizing like drinking is really common. It's really normal within the rest of the world, and you're gonna have to be there for yourself. No one else is gonna be there for you. They're gonna want to have a good time, and you don't want to be the bummer. And it's about learning, making myself happy in those moments, and seeing like kind of the silver lining of like I didn't have to spend as much money this weekend, like, or I got to try, like we went to wineries like for a day, like we hit like 8, and I was just like, well, I get to try really good charcuterie boards, or just like it really not phasing me as much as it used to. And I think that is one of the biggest things that can really kind of get into your sobriety, is throwing yourself a pity party. Is I think like a really, it sounds bad, but like that's one of the things that you can really get in your own head if you're realizing like this sucks, I have to do this for the rest of my life, I'm young, like I had to throw away like being young really quickly. But I like I said, it takes practice to like think positively, but I actually can think in those moments like, yeah, but I got my life like on track like way earlier than like my parents did. Or I one of the things I can focus on instead of like drinking, like I can focus on how I can be there for my friend and make this like a better weekend for her, or anything like that. And I actually like texted like my sister and like some of my friends. I'm like, this is the most unfazed I've felt by alcohol ever, which is like such a sweet feeling.
Well, I think, yeah,
Yeah.
you've come a long way. I mean, you've worked the program and you've come a
Mm-hmm.
long way, and you can see it in your smile. I only know you for the last couple months, and when you say that you had anxiety and depression, it's just, for me, I can't even imagine, because when I think of Sarah, I think of this big, big smile, and the fact that you've been able to use the toolbox to be able to, continue your relationships with people and be able to, move forward.
Yeah.
What would you say to people at home who are having some issues with anxiety and depression? Maybe they're just stuck there, or maybe they're also coping with alcohol and drugs. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
either way, or maybe they're at the place where they're just starting to feel really anxious. I know a lot of people, this is wintertime, can be a time of year where people feel very alone too.
Absolutely.
What would you say to them? And, you know, what was your old self in that
Mm-hmm.
moment? And if what, I know that your parents and your family came to you, or what would you, if you could go back in time, what would you tell yourself?
I think, I mean, it's hard telling people in those situations what to do, because I do know like how unmotivated and hopeless it all feels. I say all these things with a grain of salt. Like getting help is not easy. It's mustering everything in you. And I do remember what it's like to just, I can't even like get up and like brush my teeth right now. Like it seems like the end of the world. It seems like it just felt so hopeless. I think the number one message that a lot of people don't they've thought about, but like that's really hard, is that you're not a burden to ask for help, and there are people who are very anxious to help you. I don't know if you'll love the help they give you at first. Getting suggestions are hard, but um, your life is really worth it. I think that's something of just like, I remember feeling very like, what, like my life does not matter. Like it, me getting better does not matter. It would, not to get dark, but it would almost like be better if I went away. But like it really, um, there is a high value on your life, and there are people who think the same, and it's really sweet seeing those people, and then you become one of those people as well who want to help others. It takes a long time to get there, but there really is hope out there. um, it seems, and it seems really far away, seems really hard to grasp, but there is. It's going to take a while, but it really does happen. You really can get better.
I love that. There's a high value of your life, and there's people that feel the same. I think that's a great way to end our chat.
Yeah.
I hope everybody can hear that loud and clear, that is listening, that there are people to help, and is a value, of course, in everybody's life. Look at Sarah, and how far she's come. So I know you take it a day at a time, but I do want to say just congratulations on your 2-year
Thank you
anniversary
so much.
Wednesday. And thanks again for taking
Yeah.
the time and having the courage to come live with us
Thanks
here.
for having me. I feel honored. All
Thanks, everybody.
right. Bye, guys.
Bye.